I still vividly remember the day my little sister Mia was born. I was only 4 years old at the time and my parents told me I was about to become a big sister. They said it would be wonderful, that I'd have a lifelong best friend. But what they didn't mention was that from that day forward, I would become invisible. My name is Sarah, and growing up in the Taylor family meant learning one hard truth early on. There was a clear hierarchy in our house. This determined, to me, Mia was at the top, and I was somewhere below, even the family cat. The differences in how my parents treated us weren't subtle, they were glaringly obvious in everyday life. Every morning my mom would make a custom breakfast for Mia. Over easy eggs and toast cut into triangles, just the way her little princess liked. Meanwhile, I got handed a box of cereal and a spoon. When I needed braces, my dad complained about the cost for weeks, but 2 years later, when Mia needed braces, they didn't hesitate to buy her the expensive invisible ones, the kind I had once dreamed of but was told were too much. They justified it by saying, "Mia deserves it more." These disparities were everywhere. When I got an A on a difficult test, the most I received was a half-hearted nod from my dad. But when Mia landed a small role in a school play, the whole family went out to her favorite restaurant to celebrate. Birthdays made the differences even more obvious. My parties were simple: a store-bought cake, a few friends, and a backyard dinner. Mia's birthdays, on the other hand, were grand events with bounce houses, clowns, and elaborately decorated custom cakes. I tried to bring up the unfairness to my parents, but my complaints were always dismissed. "You're so practical, Sarah. Mia is different. She needs these things," my mom would say. As if I wasn't also her daughter. What hurt more was overhearing her tell a friend, "Sarah's so down to earth, she doesn't care about these little things, but Mia understands the value of everything." The worst part was watching Mia change over the years. As a child, she was sweet. We used to build blanket forts and tell silly stories together. But year after year, my parents' unconditional favoritism turned Mia into someone entirely different. Entitled and dismissive. By the time she was 10, she had become exactly the person everyone expected. "Sarah, where's my blue sweater?" she demanded one day, rifling through my closet without asking. "That's mine, Mia. Mom got it for my birthday," I replied, but of course that didn't matter. "Mom, Sarah won't share," Mia yelled. And, as always, my mom said, "Sarah, don't be selfish, let your sister borrow it." I learned to pick my battles, to lower my expectations, and to seek validation elsewhere. School became my refuge. While Mia was praised for participating in a small play, I won science competitions and excelled in advanced classes. But my achievements never seemed to matter. Even when I earned a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university, dinner that night was all about Mia's campaign for class treasurer. I tried to interject, "I got a full scholarship, Mom," but she simply replied, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to ask Mia about her plans to hang campaign posters. Over the years, I came to realize that in my parents' eyes, I could never measure up to Mia. But that only fueled my determination to break free from the cycle. The favoritism and unfairness I endured didn't just hurt, they drove me to prove my worth, not to them, but to myself. During my final years of high school, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't let my parents' indifference hold me back anymore. If they couldn't be proud of me, then I would be proud enough for the both of them. I set one clear goal: to escape the Taylor household and build a life where I no longer had to live in Mia's shadow. School was the only place where I felt valued, and I was determined to make the most of every opportunity to succeed. I threw myself into my studies with an almost obsessive determination. I spent countless hours in the library, poring over textbooks and researching every topic related to my classes. While Mia attended dances and weekend parties, I stayed up late working on assignments and preparing for the SATs. I didn't just want good grades, I wanted to be the best. And when the results came in, I achieved exactly that. I graduated at the top of my class and received an acceptance letter from one of the state's top universities, along with a full-ride scholarship. I still remember the day I held that acceptance letter in my hands, overwhelmed with joy and hope. I thought finally my parents would have to be proud of me. But that evening at dinner, as always, the conversation revolved around Mia. She had just been chosen as the assistant director for her school play. When I tried to share my exciting news, My mom brushed it off with a dismissive, "That's great, Sarah. But don't forget Mia's really busy with her new role too." My happiness shattered, but instead of feeling sad, I gained clarity. I could no longer wait for their approval. My success didn't need validation from anyone but myself. When I started college, it felt like I was finally free. No longer under my parents' constant comparisons, I experienced true freedom for the first time in my life. I threw myself into my classes with a newfound enthusiasm, made friends who appreciated and respected me for who I was, and finally felt like I belonged. Meanwhile, Mia struggled to adjust to college life. My mom frequently called to complain that Mia felt overwhelmed and homesick, and she would add, "You are so focused on school that you don't even care about your sister." Those comments no longer hurt me, they only fueled my determination. In my second year, I began an internship at a small advertising agency. Even though I started with basic tasks, I worked hard and took every opportunity to learn from my coworkers. That effort paid off. By the end of my internship, I was offered a part-time position with a higher salary than I had expected. For the first time, I could cover my living expenses on my own and even start saving for my future. While Mia was still struggling to switch her major and relying on our mom to send her tuition payments, I was steadily building my career. After graduating with honors, I received a full-time job offer from a prestigious company in my field. My starting salary was enough not only to cover my living expenses but also to send a little money back to my parents each month. Even though they never seemed to care about my achievements, I still wanted to fulfill my duty as their daughter. Yet their indifference remained unchanged. Whenever I called home, the conversation always revolved around Mia, her new job, the parties she attended, or the challenges she faced. They never asked about my work, whether I was tired or if I needed anything. It seemed the only thing that mattered to them was the money I sent regularly. But that didn't bother me anymore. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for myself. I knew I had overcome countless obstacles to get where I was, and that was enough for me. Those years were a time of self-discovery and growth. I not only rose above the indifference and unfairness I had endured, but also proved to myself that I could create my own worth. And while my parents never acknowledged me, I realized their approval no longer mattered. I had found pride where it truly counted. In myself. Life after college seemed to open a promising new chapter. I quickly settled into my role at a prestigious advertising agency and rented a small apartment near the city center. It was there that I reconnected with Ethan, a software engineer I'd known back in high school. We ran into each other at a casual get-together with old friends, and from our first conversation I felt a deep connection between us. Ethan was warm, caring, and seemed to understand the emotional scars I carried from my childhood. He made me feel valued and loved, something I had never truly experienced from my own family. We dated for 2 years before deciding to get married. Our wedding wasn't extravagant, just a small ceremony with Ethan's family and a few close friends. My own family attended, but they felt more like distant guests than actual relatives. By then, I didn't expect much from them, and honestly, it no longer hurt the way it once had. The early years of our marriage were calm and fulfilling. Ethan was a devoted husband and I finally felt like I had found a true home. His family, especially his younger sister Jenny, welcomed me as one of their own. Jenny became the sister I had always wished Mia could be. A friend, a confidant, and someone who truly prioritized family. We spent weekends together, hosting family dinners and going on outings. Jenny supported me in every decision I made, and whenever I needed advice, she was the first person I turned to. However, things began to change after I gave birth to our son Noah. At first, Ethan was an incredible father, always present for me and Noah. But after Noah turned 1, I noticed Ethan becoming increasingly distant. He started coming home late, citing work as an excuse. Family dinners grew infrequent, and he began missing important moments in Noah's life. I tried to reassure myself that it was just the stress of adjusting to life as a parent, that Ethan just needed time to adapt. But the truth came out one otherwise ordinary evening. Ethan came home with a heavy look in his eyes and confessed that he had fallen in love with someone else, a client of his. "She understands me," he said, his voice trembling. My heart felt like it was being crushed. I couldn't believe the man I once thought was my rock had betrayed our family, yet for Noah's sake I kept my composure. We agreed to divorce amicably, and Ethan promised to take full responsibility for Noah, both financially and emotionally. After the divorce, I found myself in a void. But thankfully, Ethan's family, especially Jenny, never turned their backs on me. Instead, they became my greatest source of support during those difficult months. Jenny visited often, bringing homemade meals and spending hours playing with Noah so I could have some time to rest. Ethan's parents, Tom and Sarah, also showered Noah with love. He was always welcomed at their home, and whenever he was there, he lit up in the warmth of their care. Meanwhile, my own parents barely acknowledged what I was going through. Whenever I tried to bring Noah to visit them, it always ended in disappointment. They complained that Noah was too noisy, that he disrupted their routine, and they barely paid attention to their only grandson. But I had grown used to their indifference. Instead, I chose to focus on the people who truly cared, the ones who genuinely loved me and Noah. The divorce taught me a valuable lesson: family isn't defined by blood. Family is made up of the people who choose to stand by you, not out of obligation but out of love. Jenny, Tom and Sarah proved that to me. And because of them, I found the strength to move forward. Even though Ethan was no longer a part of my life, I realized I still had a family. A true family. Where both Noah and I were cherished, loved, and supported. I always thought that even if my parents never valued me, perhaps they would love Noah in some way. After all, he was their first and only grandchild. I tried to foster a relationship between my son and his grandparents. Occasionally I would take Noah to visit them, hoping they would spend time with him and show some affection. But things never turned out the way I hoped. Those visits usually ended in disappointment. "Sarah, don't let Noah knock over my crystal vase," my mom yelled, her eyes still glued to the magazine in her hands. "Be careful or he'll scratch the hardwood floor." I glanced down at Noah, who stood silently beside me, his tiny hand clutching my dress. I could see in his eyes that he sensed their coldness. It was the same look I had grown accustomed to as a child. But seeing my own child endure that same indifference broke my heart in a way I had never experienced before. The visits became even more difficult whenever Mia was around. Every time my sister walked into the house, the atmosphere shifted. "Here's our golden girl," my dad would beam, embracing Mia like she was the only light in his life. They barely even glanced at Noah, who was holding up his latest drawing, eager to share it. Every time, I'd end up pulling my tearful son out of their house, wondering why I kept trying to hold on to a relationship they clearly didn't care about. Then came the day I had to be rushed to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. The pain struck me at work, and I was taken to the ER, where the doctor informed me I needed immediate surgery. My first thought was Noah. Who would pick him up from school? I called my mom, believing that in this urgent situation, she would prioritize her grandson above all else. The phone rang several times before she answered. "Mom, I'm at the hospital," I said, my voice shaky with pain. "I need surgery right away. Can you pick up Noah from school and watch him for a few days?" I pleaded, hope filling my heart. But her response was like a dagger to my chest. "Oh sweetheart, I'm afraid I can't. Today's Mia's promotion party. We still have to prepare, and there will be over 40 guests. You understand, don't you?" "But Noah," I tried to argue, my voice breaking. "He needs someone to pick him up, Mom. He's just a child." "Sarah, you always make everything such a big deal. Noah is your responsibility, not mine," she said, her tone cold. "Don't let children become a burden." The call ended and I lay there in my hospital bed, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't believe that even in a moment of crisis, my parents couldn't put family above their trivial priorities. Desperate, I called Jenny. She didn't hesitate for a second. "Sarah, Noah is my nephew. Of course I'll go right away. Send me the school's details and I'll take care of everything," she said. Her voice steady and reassuring. During my 2 days in the hospital, Jenny sent me pictures of Noah playing with Max, her family's dog, building blanket forts and baking cookies in her kitchen. I realized then that Noah didn't need his maternal grandparents to have a happy childhood. He already had Jenny, Tom, and Sarah, people who genuinely loved and cherished him. When I was discharged, I came home to find Jenny had prepared dinner, tidied the house, and even bought some new toys for Noah. Watching my son giggle as he played with Max, I realized something profound. Family isn't always about blood. Family is about the people who love you unconditionally and stand by you when you need them the most. A few weeks later, I decided to cut off the financial support I had been sending my parents. The money I had been using to help them pay off their car loans, a gesture they never once thanked me for, would now go toward Noah and our life together. When my mom called, her voice sickeningly sweet, asking if I could send more because Mia couldn't provide as much as they'd hoped, I simply replied, "I've done everything I can. You're on your own now." Then, I ended the call, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I don't know how my parents and Mia will manage without my support, but it's no longer my concern. I have a real family now. People who are there for me when it matters most. And I will never let Noah feel abandoned or unimportant. He will always know he is loved and valued. After that final phone call with my mother, I knew it was time to make a decision, for myself and for Noah. I had spent far too many years trying to prove my worth to them, hoping that one day I'd receive the recognition and love I had always craved. But now I understood that all my efforts were in vain. They didn't see me as an important part of their family, and they certainly didn't care about Noah. I had to make it to Noah. I couldn't let their indifference and selfishness impact our lives any longer. It was a quiet Saturday evening at Jenny's house. Noah was playing with Max in the yard, his laughter ringing through the air and easing the weight of my exhaustion. Jenny brought out 2 cups of hot tea and sat beside me on the porch swing. "Sarah, I know this isn't an easy decision, but sometimes, to protect yourself and Noah, you have to do it," she said, her eyes filled with understanding. I nodded. "You're right, Jenny. I've tried for so long, but it's meaningless. I can't let Noah grow up thinking love has to be earned through suffering or one-sided sacrifice. I want him to know he's worthy of unconditional love, just like the way you and your family have shown him." The next morning I took the first steps to sever ties with my parents. I canceled the automatic monthly transfers, removed their numbers from my contacts, and blocked them on social media. It wasn't easy, but the sense of relief slowly outweighed the initial hesitation. I had spent too many years clinging to a relationship that only I was trying to build. Now, I was ready to let go and find real peace. The next day I deposited my bank account and made my way back out to the trading floor. In the weeks that followed, my parents bombarded me with phone calls, texts, and voicemail messages. At first they were full of anger. "You're so ungrateful, Sarah. We're your family, you can't treat us like this." Later the tone shifted to pleading. "Please, Sarah, just help us one more time. Emma can't manage and we have no one else to turn to." But I didn't respond. I knew that if I engaged, I would be pulled back into their cycle of exploitation and pain. Instead, I focused on what truly mattered. I spent more time with Noah, taking him to the park, reading bedtime stories, and baking his favorite cookies together. Jenny and her family remained by our side, creating a loving environment where Noah felt secure and cherished. During family dinners at their house, I no longer felt like an outsider. Instead, I felt valued and like I truly belonged. One day Noah brought home a drawing from school. It was a family tree with little branches representing his loved ones. "Mom, I added Aunt Jenny, Grandpa Tom, Grandma Sarah, and Max too," Noah exclaimed excitedly. As I looked at the drawing, my heart swelled with emotion. My parents and Emma weren't on that family tree, and I knew that was exactly how it should be. Family isn't about titles or obligations. It's about those who love and support you unconditionally. Oh. I hung Noah's drawing on the living room wall, right next to a photo of us with Jenny's family from a recent picnic. Every time I looked at those images, I felt a deep sense of peace. I no longer needed to seek love from people unwilling to give it. I had found my true family. A place where Noah and I were loved completely. 3 months later, as things began to settle, I received a letter from my mother. It was long, filled with both accusations and apologies. but I didn't open it. I tucked it away in a drawer. Not to keep it, but because I no longer cared. Everything I needed I already had. A real family, where Noah and I truly belonged. The days that followed passed in calm and quiet contentment. I stopped keeping track of my parents or Emma, and it no longer mattered. I had learned that sometimes, to find true happiness, you have to be brave enough to let go of what hurts you. And that's exactly what I had done. For myself, and for my son. After cutting ties with my parents, it felt like a new door had opened in my life. A door leading to freedom. Freedom from unreasonable expectations, from blame, and from the indifference I had endured for so long. But above all, it was the freedom to love, and to be loved, fully and unconditionally. I began to focus completely on building a better life for Noah and myself. In the mornings I would wake up early to prepare breakfast for Noah, watching his innocent face light up as he excitedly talked about what he planned to do at school that day. I made sure that every day of his was filled with joy and a sense of being loved. Small moments, like baking cookies together or reading books before bed, reminded me that true happiness isn't found in anything extravagant or complicated. It's in the simple, heartfelt moments of genuine love. Jenny and her family remained an essential part of our lives. To Noah, Jenny was like a true aunt, and Tom and Sarah felt like real grandparents. They constantly went out of their way to make us feel welcomed and part of their family. On weekend evenings we often had backyard barbecues. Noah would play with Max, while Jenny and I sat and talked under the warm glow of the patio lights. In those moments, I realized that family isn't about who you're born to, but about those who choose to love and accept you. My career also began to flourish like never before. I gained the trust of my superiors and colleagues, taking on bigger, more challenging projects. Every achievement made me proud, not just for myself but because I was building a better future for Noah. Every paycheck I earned was invested in the things that mattered most: his education, experiences that allowed him to explore the world, and a loving home, where he could always feel safe. Still, the past occasionally found its way back to me. One day while organizing old papers, I came across a photo of my family from years ago. In the picture, I stood next to Mia, my smile awkward and strained. My parents stood behind us, their faces beaming with pride as they looked at Mia, completely ignoring me. But as I stared at the photo, I didn't feel sad or angry anymore. Instead, I felt grateful for the hardships I had endured because they made me stronger. They taught me my worth and showed me that I didn't need to live to please anyone. When Noah came home with an award from school for his outstanding presentation, I hugged him tightly and told him how proud I was of him. The bright sparkle in his eyes assured me that I was on the right path. I wanted my son to grow up in an environment where he always knew he was loved and supported, where he never felt the need to prove his worth to anyone. That evening, after Noah had fallen asleep, I sat by the window and looked up at the starry sky. I thought about everything that had happened, the pain, the hurt, and the lessons I had learned. I had found freedom, not just from the past, but the freedom to create a brighter future. A future where Noah and I were surrounded by people who truly loved us. And I knew, despite how difficult this journey had been, I would never go back to the way things were. We were living a better life now, a life full of love and hope. And for me, that was everything. The lesson from this story is that family isn't always defined by blood ties, but by love, respect, and unconditional support. Sometimes letting go of toxic relationships is necessary to protect yourself and your loved ones. True freedom comes from living true to your values, building positive relationships, and focusing on what truly matters. Love doesn't need to be earned or proven, and happiness comes from finding and cherishing your real family. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more inspiring stories about life, family, and meaningful lessons. Thank you for being with us.
I was sitting in the first floor lobby aimlessly when I occurred to look in the direction of the elevator. I was shocked to see Sarah and Mark emerge from the elevator, their faces utterly miserable. I hurried to them without stopping to ponder. What took place? The demonstration. It's just been 10 minutes or so. Sarah shook her head feebly. It's finished already. She sounded as though she was about to cry in her voice. How on earth could that have happened? My name is Charles. I'm 30 years old, and right now I'm facing the two of them while tightening my fists on the first level of Grand Holdings. Best of luck. Everything will be okay. I'm sure of it. Mark, the seasoned senior employee, nodded mildly at what I said. Then there was Sarah. She bit her lip anxiously. This Johnson Advertising president. Sure, we can handle this. We're sure to succeed with your film and Mark's flyer design, right? Sarah flashed me a charming grin, dressed in a navy blue suit and with her beautiful black hair pulled back. You can almost make out her adorable double tooth when she smiles. Yes, I put all of my effort and abilities into the film, and I think it will turn out great. Kindly give the presentation your all. The elevator's doors opened as it descended from the top levels, and I bowed deeply. Mark and Sarah came inside and looked at me. All right, let's go. As I saw the numbers on the display rise, the elevator doors closed with those words. My chest throbbed with my heartbeat. Everything will work out. I sat down in a corner of the large lobby, telling myself that over and over. The Grand Holdings new product advertising competition begins today. It was a hard project because of the rather ambiguous budget and project scope. Johnson Advertising has so been putting a lot of effort into it for months. Every company has been allotted 45 minutes to showcase their proposals. Ours began at 6:00 p.m. Only 2 representatives from each company were allowed to participate due to the recent outbreak of an infectious ailment. Because of this, Sarah, who made the estimates, and Mark, who is the best print designer in our company, took part, and I stayed in the lobby in case they required anything related to the video I made. Sarah, the 28-year-old president who had vanished behind the elevator doors earlier, took on the post not as a superwoman, but rather because her parents, the company's previous leaders, had died unexpectedly. Many employees of Johnson Advertising departed the company after the unexpected death of the previous president, who had a significant effect. Just a few of workers, like Mark, who was worried about Sarah, remained, transforming the business into a prestigious but little advertising agency. They've been just making ends meet with the ongoing projects they've been able to hold onto, but their financial circumstances are probably dire. To get a big contract, we have to win this competition, which came to us through the former president's contacts. Sarah put forth a lot of effort to create a proposal that would differentiate hers from the others. A year ago, I started working as a video editor for this faltering company, fighting with the figures and the estimates. Originally specializing in print work, Johnson Advertising began outsourcing its video assignments to independent contractors when they began to come in. However, they made the decision to bring on an internal video editor when we started getting more requests for flyer and video packages together. That's when I grabbed hold of the chance. After college, I had worked in sales at first, but it wasn't a career I was comfortable in. My pay was poor and my performance was subpar as a result. While I was idly viewing films on the internet one day, I noticed an advertisement for a crowdsourcing website. It served as a platform for connections between individuals seeking different types of work and those seeking to outsource tasks. It was possible to complete transactions without disclosing private information such as residences or true identities. Of course, using the website came with fees for intermediaries. I was intrigued by the concept and began researching it. I discovered that almost any profession could be done from home in today's internet-driven society, and the more I read, the more I wanted to give it a shot. I looked into careers that seemed profitable and approachable for newcomers, and I decided to pursue video editing. I had only ever worked on video production once during a class in high school. I had a hard time at first even inputting a single line of text. I couldn't accomplish it at all. However, as I eventually got the hang of it, I began to like it and became engrossed in the details, which led to me earning a respectable grade. I was even given praise by my teacher, who said, "You have a good eye." I started educating myself video editing after keeping it in mind. After a few months of schooling, I submitted for any job that required a video editor and posted some of my own videos to a crowdsourcing website, getting my old cat, Mittens, as a nickname. Even though the first jobs paid very little, I felt accomplished because my work was acknowledged as professional. But as time passed, my need for more grew. I started to feel worn out because so many of the tasks didn't pay enough for the amount of time they required. Then a job that paid rather well came. Mist was the name of the client. I applied with little hope of getting hired, but I did. In addition, I got great feedback on my work. From that point on, Mist would periodically bring me contracts, and I had a quite busy life, working as a side contractor in the evenings after getting home from my sales job. But soon, I realized that I wanted to give up sales and focus only on video editing for a living. Around that time, I came across Johnson Advertising's urgent job posting for a video editor. I seized the opportunity and submitted my application and a sample of my work. The movies I made for clients gave me greater confidence, but I was hesitant to show them to others, so I made a new video that included all of my existing abilities. When Sarah watched it, her eyes brightened, and that's how I came to have a happy life working as a video editor at Johnson Advertising. I have fully ceased accepting jobs through the crowdsourcing website since I joined the company. Utilizing the abilities I was now devoting to Johnson Advertising for other businesses didn't feel appropriate for some reason. Additionally, there was a chance that those other businesses would eventually turn into competitors. Shortly before that, I got a nice word that they were getting an internal video editor and wouldn't need me anymore. I was positively impressed with the message's thoughtful wording. I thanked them for everything in a similarly considerate note in return. I haven't checked into the crowdsourcing website since. While these ideas were going through my head, I was hoping that Sarah and Mark's presentation would go well. I heard the elevator's arrival on the first floor after what seemed like 10 minutes. I felt that I should at least give them a bow of greeting if it was a representative of the company we were pitching to. To my surprise, Sarah and Mark emerged from the elevator looking utterly miserable as I got up from my chair and turned to face it. I hurried to them without stopping to ponder. What took place? It's barely been 10 minutes or so. Oh, is it now my turn? Sarah shook her head faintly when I asked. It's already over. She sounded as if she was going to cry in her voice. They asked to see the estimate first, and when I showed it to them, they said there's no way we could discuss anything with those numbers. I was furious. How absurd is that? They didn't even bother to look at the flyer or the video, despite though we put so much care and emotion into them. Sarah and Mark both hung their heads at what I said. I apologize. You put in a lot of work, and to our dismay, they didn't even look at my estimate, let alone give us the opportunity to present. They were holding presentation materials, which I took. Sarah's surprised eyes grew wide. There is still a lot of time remaining. I will not stand for it. I don't care how big they are if they still refuse to accept us. Even if they wind up detesting us, I'm okay with not dealing with a firm like that. I swiftly hit the close button after leaving those comments behind and entered the elevator. Sarah and Mark's shocked expressions vanished from view as the door closed, and the elevator shifted gradually. The 10th floor housed the presentation room. The elevator was going up as I nervously watched the numbers grow, when all of a sudden it halted at the 4th floor. Hurry up already. I waited for the door to open, gritting my teeth. When it eventually happened, I saw an incredibly gorgeous woman in person. She stood beside me, bowing slightly. Her subtle perfume smell drifted through the air, but I had no time to get sidetracked by her. I clicked the shut button again immediately after making sure she was on board. I stared at the floor numbers for a moment before the woman started talking. If you keep shaking like that, the elevator might stop. Her comments forced me to wake up. I became aware that I had been tapping my foot tremblingly on the ground. I said, "Sorry," and stopped squirming right away. She gave a quiet smile. "It's all right." The 10th level. "By any chance, are you here for the advertising presentation?" A little taken aback, I nodded. At that moment, the doors to the elevator on the 10th floor opened. She called after me as I made a hasty exit. "We are traveling to the same location. Allow me to lead the way." Oh, and I apologize for the late introduction. As she talked, she gave me her business card. I pulled out my own card and gave it to her, even though I didn't think I required an introduction or a guide. I was astonished to see the card she had given me. The title manager and the phrase marketing department were printed on it. "Manager Sophia?" Surprised, I asked Sophia, and she grinned. "Yes, I thought I'd drop by since it's almost the end of the presentation time." "What do you mean by judging only by the budget without even looking at the content?" I blurted out before she could finish. Sophia's eyes grew wide at what I said. "What do you mean?" I had to reveal the details in a furious tone, remembering Sarah's wounded expression. Sophia's eyes narrowed as I spoke, and she hurried out of the room, leaving me there. I hastened to get behind her. The two guys inside the meeting room, who were finishing up, stared at us in shock when Sophia suddenly burst through the door. Their apparent belief that the presentation was already concluded enraged and frustrated me. "What are you doing? There's still an opportunity." With a smile, the two men replied that it was already done. It seems like they were unaware of my presence. Sophia then turned to face me again and apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, but this is going to be an internal issue. Would you mind waiting outside for a short while?" I gave a nod, and she slammed the heavy door. I attempted to listen, but I was unable to hear anything because the door was so sturdy. I decided to just wait for the door to open once more. The door opened after some time, and both men and Sophia bowed profoundly to me. "We really regret any offense we may have caused. Even though you might not want to work for our organization anymore, we would still like to see your presentation if you have the time. How do you feel?" Their courteous apologies surprised me. Obviously. I'll head straight over to grab the others. Sophia said, "Charles." As I turned to go, I had given her a card before, and she had recalled my name. Normally, we only allow 2 representatives per company, but since you're already here, we'd love for you to join us as well. After saying that, it was determined that I would also participate in the presentation. After 5 minutes, Sarah, Mark, and I found ourselves back in the company of Sophia and the 2 men from Grand Holdings. We showed them the concepts for the flyer and video after delivering the estimate, and Sarah spoke confidently as she presented the marketing plan. Following the completion of all explanations, we went on to the Q and a period. It was Sophia who spoke first. What was the reasoning behind this estimate? Sarah answered the question. She clarified that they cut the budget as much as they could and did everything they could to set themselves apart from the competitors since they were desperate to win. She happily remarked that Mark and I both worked rapidly, which resulted in a big labor cost reduction. When she mentioned me in her compliments about her efficiency, I felt a little proud of myself. However, Sophia shook her head and sighed. "It's too low." We looked at one another, bewildered by her sudden statements. "Everything you've shown, even the plan, is extraordinarily well done. Our organization would be ridiculed if we awarded this work at this price. It's that excellent." She was very complimentary about the presentation's content, even though she had harsh remarks regarding the price. I was a little perplexed. I regret for the hostility shown by our representatives before, but I understand why they chose not to read the information. When Sophia said that, I furrowed my brow. They didn't even think it was worth looking at because it was so inexpensive. We all widened our eyes in dismay. The 2 men in charge of the presentation seemed like very capable individuals who had been given this responsibility because of their stellar resumes. They had spent the entire day listening to speeches, so they were likewise worn out. They had concluded in that state that no amount of conversation would matter if the budget didn't correspond. Grand Holdings was searching for solutions that fit within a general idea they had in mind. However, they did not provide us with a budget estimate. No matter how good the presentation was, they subtly indicated solutions that were too costly as being outside of their purview, making it seem like a waste of time. To a certain extent, I could comprehend such mentality. Sophia answered a question I had been having. People tend to believe that if something is too cheap, the quality must also be poor. Sarah was shivering a little next to me. With a focused gaze, Sophia seemed to be emphasizing the importance of not undervaluing your work and not lowering your rates too quickly. Sarah bowed at the firmness of her assertion. The estimate was created by myself. I apologize. I should have known better. We all bent our heads at the same time. I thought I detected a smirk from Sophia. I carefully looked up and saw her gorgeous face with a loving smile. It was a far cry from the furious look she'd worn seconds earlier. We would be inclined to accept this as the final amount, but I want to be respectful of the caliber of your work, particularly the video editing. This is how it ought to be priced. We were shocked when Sophia showed us the figure on her calculator. I suddenly became aware of how little I had been paid for the work I had done on the crowdsourcing website. Sophia giggled a little at our response. We can't declare a winner for the competition just yet, but if we do end up working together, we'll discuss the pricing. As we looked at each other, Sarah, Mark, and I couldn't help but smile. After the presentation, we felt very satisfied and exited Grand Holdings. Sarah buried her face in her hands. The price was too low. How unflattering. The ability to edit videos is genuinely specialized. Even though I was aware of the challenges, I must have been outsourcing for absurdly low costs. I would like to go back and give Mittens more money. I turned to look at her as soon as she said it. What? What have you just said? Mitten. Sarah's eyes opened in shock at my shout. What? Yes, indeed. I used to use a crowdsourcing website to outsource all of our video work before you joined. I now see that my offer was still far too low, even though I felt it was a little higher than other ads. I shook my head, shocked by this. Wait, are you? Sarah's eyes continued to swell. What? How were you aware of this? Oh no, that can't be true. As soon as I saw how astonished she looked, I said, I'm Mittens. In actuality, you were paying fairly liberally in comparison to others. I was tremendously motivated by it at the time. You usually don't know the genuine identities or addresses of the people you deal with on crowdsourcing websites. If they are so similar, you might be able to tell what state they reside in. But I never thought I would run into a client I had worked with here. I essentially just made the switch from being a freelancer hired on an as-needed basis to a full-time employee. How ironic. The situation was so amusing that I had to laugh. Sarah laughed a little, just like me. I was secretly hoping Mittens would apply when we were hiring for a video editor. I considered contacting you, but you hadn't disclosed your location, and it's against the guidelines to make direct contact. It seems that all along you were in Tokyo. It is strictly forbidden for users of a crowdsourcing site to transact directly with one another without first visiting the site. Employing someone would probably be subject to the same restriction. Everything makes sense now. I started equating each application with Mittens, so you may imagine my surprise when you finally showed up. This guy is as good as Mittens, I thought to myself. Well, of course, it's because it was you. We took some time to reflect on the past and exchanged tales about how difficult some projects had been and how others had felt like we were exactly in sync. Sarah abruptly became serious and apologized for underestimating your abilities. I commit to thoroughly assessing your work going forward. Will you then still support me and give me your strength? My heart raced to her serious stare. I could sense the reddening of my face. Obviously. I'm excited about it. Sarah gave a nice smile at what I said. Thoughts of how much I loved that smile kept coming to me. I picked up the office phone out of habit a few days later when it called. I heard someone on the other end gently exhale as soon as I introduced myself. I appreciate you answering my call. Sophia from Brand Holdings is here. I wanted to express my gratitude for your time earlier. Sitting up straight, I heard Sophia's voice. So what was the result of the competition? As I turned the phone over to Sarah, our president, I swallowed anxiously, but Sophia persisted, saying, "After looking through the submissions, we've decided that we would love to work with Johnson Advertising on this project. Are you up for the challenge?" I gave a high-pitched fist pump. Every employee in the room looked up at my clenched hand. I'd also like to make our partnership stronger. How about we meet together for a quick meal at some point to better get to know one another? Without releasing the phone from my ear, I exclaimed, "Yes." Even though she couldn't see me, she took a deep bow and said, "We'd be honored." A few days later, the same group of people who attended the presentation got together for supper at a moderately priced restaurant. To be honest, I was so anxious that I was having trouble tasting the food. But Sophia and the two Grand Holdings men were in high spirits, and each time the topic turned back to the presentation, the guys apologized profusely. I couldn't help but sympathize with them, thinking that Sophia had probably given them a hard time. We were going to go to a bar for another round, but both men had small kids at home, so they hurried back to their families. Mark also made the decision to end the evening, claiming he was done drinking. In the end, it was only Sophia, Sarah, and I going to the pub. I was most anxious about Sophia, so Sarah and I were both on edge and trying not to make any mistakes. However, Sophia seemed accustomed to this environment and naturally put us at ease. Sarah excused herself as the environment warmed up, saying, "Oh, I'll just go to the restroom for a moment," leaving Sophia and me alone. My heart raced in the short calm that followed, as her aroma seemed to get stronger. Sophia asked me, "So, do you have a girlfriend?" as she leaned on her hand and pursed her lips. I shook my head rapidly, not sure how to respond to her query. "I don't possess one." Sophia gave a little laugh. "There must be someone you like then," I asked. Her remark struck a chord with me, and I became agitated. Sophia gave me a fixed look. I wish I were that person. I was dumbfounded and stood there looking surprised. Then Sophia started laughing. "I'm not serious. I guess I'll take my leave now, as I don't want to stay where I'm not wanted." As she talked, she took up the check. "No, let's just cover it, please." When I attempted to stop her, Sophia gave me a wink. "From now on, I will be depending on you. Shall we stay in contact, please?" She went away, but then looked back and leaned in close to say, "Don't be surprised if I make a move, okay? If things don't progress with Sarah." Sophia eventually departed from the pub after whispering something to me. With my heart still racing, I went back over the entire conversation with Sophia in my head when Sarah reappeared. She said, "Oh, where's Sophia?" And I was scarcely able to answer. "Oh, she said she decided to go home because she was feeling a little tipsy." Sarah said, "I see," and her expression softened a little. Compared to the stillness with Sophia, a heavier one hovered between us. "Well, should we leave too?" Sarah made a sudden suggestion, and even though I was taken aback, I immediately agreed. Staying was not necessary. Through the nighttime streets, we strolled slowly in the direction of the station without exchanging words. Our footsteps were the only sound audible. Sarah said, "Earlier, I actually saw something, which caught me off guard." "Observed what?" She forced a grin, but pinched her lips together as I asked uncomfortably. "It appears that you two were enjoying yourselves," she remarked, glancing ahead. "Sophia is quite stunning, isn't she? It's incredible that you have such a strong attraction to someone, Charles. I simply lack the competence in comparison to that." Sarah spoke rapidly. "Do you believe Grand Holdings would try to steal your job? I want you to support me at work at the very least. But is that asking for too much?" I gave Sarah a quick embrace in the back as she carried on talking. "You are the one I love, Sarah. Her shoulders went shaky. What? I spoke softly into her ear. I adore everything about you, including your effortless transition into the presidency, your contagious smile that belies your anxieties, and your endearing grin with your 2 front teeth protruding. I adore everything about it. Not at all. My 2 front teeth. My biggest insecurity is that, when the company starts to bring in more money, I have been intending to get braces. I burst out laughing gently. In any case, I'm relieved that business isn't flourishing. Sarah laughed quietly at my lighthearted remark. Do you really think you want me? Sophia is much more than that. I encircled her tightly in my arms. Sarah, I want you. Sarah gave me a firm handshake. I'm overjoyed. She grinned as she glanced up at me. Let's be partners in life and at work from now on. She gave me the cutest smile I had ever seen, her little double tooth showing. After a few years, Rick, Jake, it's time for lunch. Proceed to cleanse your hands. Our sons Rick and Jake ran out of their room at my call. It was during the middle of the summer break. Elementary school students Jake and Rick were making the most of their break. Thankfully, Lily's kindergarten remained open over the summer, so she didn't have to worry about the break while their younger sister was having her own fun. Sarah and I were married and had a family since then. Our family expanded rapidly, and we were now a 5-member family. I worked from home to take care of things during these extended intervals or when one of the children was ill. For me as the video editor, working from home made more sense than for Sarah, who was fulfilling her role as president of the company. By the time the day was over, I would be home at about 6:00 p.m., Sarah always said. I'll hurry and get dinner ready, as she entered the room, expressing her desire to make dinner herself whenever she could. On the days she could return home on schedule, we waited for her. I had to remove each child from the group as they gathered around her one by one. By now, it was an ordinary sight. Now hurry on. Please be patient for a little while longer. Mom is busy. I led them back to their room so they could clean up. Following that, we followed the same routine. A short dinner, a bath, and a tale read aloud to the kids by Sarah before bed. In the end, it was just the 2 of us. Is it naive to claim that I get to have Sarah all to myself at this point? Regarding Johnson Advertising, Grand Holdings began sending us regular work following that day. This led to numerous other opportunities, and with a workforce that is expanding, the business is today a reliable mid-sized advertising firm that works on a broad range of projects. Sophia, too. We were invited to the wedding when she eventually married a dashing here. The event was tremendously grandiose, and Sophia looked incredibly pleased, radiant in her bridal gown. I can't help but remember that presentation, which ended abruptly after barely 10 minutes. I may not have been the most professional in my behavior that day. Really, I felt like throwing myself into their office and demanding to be heard. But we wouldn't be in this position now if we hadn't made the effort to present in that competition. My nose was tickled by the mouth-watering aroma of sizzling meat. Sarah's favorite dish has to be the chicken with butter sautéing tonight. The cheerful smell wafted through the home, and I couldn't help but smile as I urged the youngsters to keep cleaning. Move out. Michael, the department head of our business partner, said, "Subcontractor, working with someone like you will bring our company down." Instead of taking a sip, he threw his coffee cup right over my sister Jessica's head. My sister gasped and frantically reached for a handkerchief to wipe the coffee stain off her outfit. Jessica was being embarrassed in front of me, despite the fact that she had always put me first and taken care of me since we were young. I was really furious with Michael for his ridiculous actions. My sister's cold voice cut through the air as I was ready to scream, sending shivers down my spine. "Can you give Mr. Thompson a call?" She glared at Michael with sharp eyes and stated, "I need to speak with him." Aaron is my name. I am in my 30s, and I own and operate 15 businesses ranging from management consulting to producing and retailing leather goods to custom suit making. Despite being a part of a group of 15 firms, they all function rather differently because I launch businesses based on ideas that strike me at the moment. When a business takes off, I hand over day-to-day management to dependable staff members. The sense of accomplishment and joy I get from discovering new services and products that I wish were available is also quite great. It fascinates me to think about what business to launch next, but I know that my sister Jessica has played a big part in keeping me driven and aspirational. Because of our parents' negligence, we had very uncomfortable lives when we were little. We were shuffled between various relatives. My sister and I don't recall much about our parents as a result. When I became older, I understood why we kept changing schools, even if at first I didn't comprehend what was going on since I could see the reluctant looks on our relatives' faces when they took us in. Don't worry, Aaron. I'll always protect you no matter what. I'm sure I would have broken down then if my sister hadn't said those words. When I was still very young and vulnerable, her words provided the emotional support I needed. However, she must have felt a great deal of strain from it. She cooked us meals, looked over school paperwork like a parent, and took care of me. In primary school, my sister experienced hearing loss, possibly as a result of all the stress. Instead of taking her to the hospital, our relatives told her to go to sleep, saying that it will get better. Consequently, the problem had gotten much worse by the time she complained of pain. Even with a hearing aid, her ears hardly work. Perhaps things might have worked out differently if she had gotten therapy sooner. Although she has a hearing aid, her problem is severe enough to interfere with her everyday life, and it seems that solutions such as a bone conduction device or middle ear implant were difficult to use in her instance. My sister never once complained, but the shock of losing her hearing must have been devastating. Her students made fun of her disease as a result of her illness, and our relatives treated her even worse after her hearing declined. But seeing Mom never give up and always go forward in spite of all the difficulties or barriers she encountered gave me the willpower to not get bogged down in my own problems. To say that my sister and I were like a team of two may sound conceited, yet depending on her taught me how to get by on my own. That's why I am aware that my sister is solely responsible for my success as an entrepreneur and business owner. I opened my eyes wide in astonishment when my sister, who I had looked up to since we were young, stated, "I'd like you to join me for this meeting." I was taken aback to see Jessica, who owns her own company and is often self-assured and forceful, beg for my assistance with such hesitancy. "It's not often that I see you uncertain, Jessica. Is this really such a difficult deal?" Although her business isn't as large as mine, she has managed it for a considerable amount of time. She should be accustomed to working with clients because she does the majority of the sales and negotiations herself. She must be in a very tough circumstance because she was begging for my assistance. I murmured this to Jessica, and she sheepishly shook her head. "I want to make sure this deal goes through because it's pretty significant, but I just can't seem to get along with the person in charge." She used to be a strong believer who never wavered when she was younger. However, since she's entered the professional world, she appears to be experiencing the challenges of mature social interactions. An individual is not necessarily a good person just because they occupy a prominent position in a big corporation. This client seems to be the kind of challenging person that nobody enjoys working with. I made the decision to go with my sister to the meeting as a way of saying thank you for everything that she has done for me. The location was a calm, private space that was ideal for talking about delicate subjects. Jessica was obviously anxious as she kept fiddling with the collar of her tailored suit and double-checking her appearance. I made the decision to pretend I worked at Jessica's company in case someone questioned because she had warned me, "Please don't mention that you run a company." Michael, the client, arrived a bit after the appointed hour as I was contemplating this. I apologize. I got distracted looking for a smoking area and forgot the time. Would you honestly use that as an explanation, even if it were true? As Jessica deftly handled the situation, I thought, we just arrived ourselves. Jessica didn't need to rely on sign language or any other kind of aid for the time being because of this degree of contact. Jessica's ability to carry on a coherent conversation despite her limited hearing and lip-reading abilities never ceases to astound me. Even though we had been waiting for quite some time and had come more than half an hour early, Michael seemed to take Jessica's remark at face value. Then, as if it were instinctive, he handed Jessica his jacket and remarked, "Then I should have taken more time for a smoke." I watched this discussion in silence until Michael gave me a questioning glance that suggested, "Who's this guy?" "I'm glad to have met you. My name is—" Michael interrupted me as I was getting up to introduce myself, stating, "I don't need an introduction from some low-level guy." I was happy that my worry was unfounded, and that he wouldn't question me about why we had the same last name. Michael's disagreeable attitude started to make me feel uneasy at the same moment. "Would you please just get me a drink? Make it black. I don't like sweet things." With hardly a glance, he threw the menu at Jessica and muttered this. With good reason, Jessica had a concerned expression when she stared at Michael. Jessica found it challenging to understand what Michael was saying and to read his lips because he had purposefully covered his mouth when issuing the instruction. Not only was his voice muffled, but he had covered his mouth so she could not possibly imagine what he'd spoken. Even though I didn't think it was necessary for him to be so petty, I also couldn't really criticize someone who was crucial to Jessica's company. I hit the button to summon the server, thinking it would be easier if I just took care of the order. But Michael gave me a stern look and told me to shut up, low-level man. I spend a lot of time determining whether my business partners are capable of handling simple exchanges. It's true that while doing business, it's critical to take into account not just the partner's business strategy, but also the enthusiasm and moral fiber of the organization's executives and staff. But it was obvious that Michael was trying to minimize Jessica with his behavior. He appeared to be making fun of someone who was disabled. "Excuse me, but what you're doing is—" A firm grip closed around my arm before I could say anything more. Jessica, who was seated next to me, was firmly gripping my arm while shaking her head. Jessica was the one who made this arrangement, not my company. Even though I was against doing business with someone like Michael, Jessica had good reason to remain silent. I said nothing, honoring her request, and waited for the waiter to come get our order. I gave Jessica a gesture under the table that only she could comprehend. With my left hand, I traced a circle with 5 fingers, and with my other hand, I pretended to stir with a spoon. Jessica nodded slightly. I was relieved because it appeared the coffee sign had been received. "Please, 3 coffees. Might we also be able to get some damp towels?" I inquired. "I apologize," the waiter replied, apparently forgetting to bring the towels when we were seated, and then inquired about the cream and sugar. The dilemma was resolved when Jessica ordered all 3 coffees with the milk and sugar on the side. Jessica's hearing issue went unnoticed by the server because of how naturally she responded. As she'd previously stated, she developed the abilities to get by in day-to-day life since she was an adult. Michael watched the conversation between Jessica and the waiter in silence, perhaps recognizing there was nothing to find fault with. I found the entire exchange to be flawless. However, Michael slapped his hand down on the table when the server left and the coffee arrived. "Hey, how much more difficulty will you cause me? I requested that you get black coffee." Jessica was shocked by the loud sound and her shoulders shook. Taking offense at Michael's outburst, I spoke up for Jessica. "Pardon me, but I think you received everything you requested." Jessica had generously prepared for a wet towel in addition to the black coffee. The only thing you needed to do was not use the cream and sugar because they were placed separately. But Michael shook his head angrily, blurting out some silly justification. "I wouldn't need to use the spoon if I hadn't ordered the cream and sugar. I detest having a messy table, and I now have to cope with extra stuff on it." It was true that there was a little container of cream and a spoon inside the saucer he used for his coffee. Even just getting those moved aside was giving him too much bother. He was grumbling. My wrath flared as I realized there was no cause to argue with him. But before I could say anything, Jessica knelt alongside me. I apologize profusely for the inconvenience. I'm grateful for your continuing business and will make sure it doesn't happen again. Michael seemed pleased by Jessica's apology as he nodded. Even though I didn't believe them, I remained silent and observed their discussion. Let's dive straight in. I've put up a proposal that includes our parts cost and delivery schedule. Michael was given some documents by Jessica that she had taken out of her backpack. Michael took a quick look over the paperwork before slamming them onto the table. This is absurd. Both the price and the delivery speed are excessively expensive. Reduce the cost in half and add 3 extra days to the delivery time. I'll purchase twice as many parts as I had initially intended if you agree. Regarding the estimate from Jessica's parts manufacturing company, Michael was putting out ridiculous expectations. Without going too further into the records, it was clear that Michael was making excessive demands. I apologize, but that just isn't possible. Even though our staff members are trying their hardest, we are unable to meet those deadlines. Jessica labored to carry on the conversation, observing Michael's lips closely. Michael persisted in being unyielding, pressing his egotistical demands even harder. Your revenue won't change if I buy twice as much, right? And the reason your business is moving so slowly is due to those pointless ideas about social responsibility. You should never even leave the house, people like you. You simply cause hardship for society. Such a comment was ridiculous in light of the cost ratios, but it appeared Michael was not very familiar with basic cost principles. The next thing he said made my blood boil. Jessica founded her business with the goal of assisting those who are socially disadvantaged, drawing on her own struggles. Her aggressive advocacy for hiring disabled individuals resulted in a decrease in production when compared to regular businesses. Her charges were greater because of this. Jessica had nevertheless put in a great deal of effort to get contracts and maintain her company. It was obvious that there was no way to increase the profit margin any further. Jessica made a valiant attempt to clarify, but Michael just laughed and yelled, "Go away, subcontractor. Dealing with individuals such as yourself will hinder my business." Michael grabbed up his coffee cup and poured it directly over Jessica's head, not taking a sip from it. Exclaiming, "Hot!" With haste, Jessica took out a handkerchief and wiped away the coffee that had seeped into her suit. The sister who had taken care of me since we were young and always put me first was now being embarrassed in front of me. My rage reached a breaking point due to Michael's ridiculous actions. I was ready to yell when Jessica spoke, her voice so icy that it made my skin crawl. "Maybe you give your president a call. I should speak with him first." She then gave Michael a chilly, steely gaze. Stunned by Jessica's abrupt transformation in attitude, Michael first appeared astonished before erupting into laughter. "I apologize. My fingers went slick. But you'd like me to give Mr. Thompson a call. What do you believe someone running a small business like you could potentially accomplish?" Jessica kept dabbing at the coffee mark on her shoulder with her handkerchief, as if she was still in disbelief at the stubborn stain. I had the suit created at my place of business, and Jessica received it as a gift when she opened for business. Using the finest material, I had created it to fit her frame properly, so she could look confident during any discussion. "Look, I apologize for the coffee. Since it wasn't deliberate, let's put it behind us. And this agreement is off too. Yes, it's a loss for us both, but let's go on and declare it even." It's obvious that Michael believed this would not really affect his business, but he was unaware of what was going to happen. It was not anything Jessica or I intended to forgive him for. We were going to absolutely destroy him. Observing Michael take off his coat and go, I made a self-promise to persevere. I started implementing my plan that same day. Equipment manufacture and distribution were two of the businesses that Michael's company, together with its subsidiaries, operated in. Since his business strategy and mine were so similar, I decided to open a rival eatery close to one of Michael's establishments. I had been considering starting a restaurant for some time, and this development just expedited the process, which was ideal for me. Michael's restaurant franchise, well known for having many locations, took great satisfaction in providing high-quality ingredients at affordable prices. We were ideal rivals because, coincidentally, I also valued premium ingredients and wanted to provide the public with that experience. I made significant investments in marketing and promotion when my restaurant first opened, and word of mouth quickly spread, making it one of the most difficult places to acquire a reservation. It was evident that Michael's patrons were gravitating toward my place, and we skillfully steered clear of the typical hazard faced by eateries that lose their appeal after a certain point in time. My secretary called me one day to let me know that someone wanted to talk to me. It was Michael when I answered. I gave in to his insistence that we have a meeting, provided it would only be brief and one time. Michael was in full shock when he saw me. He didn't realize I was the CEO. You're the person from that time. I cynically replied, "Yes, I'm well aware of who you are," as I observed Michael repeatedly bend his head. "I think we had a prior negotiation together. I had assumed back then that you were just a worker for that small business. I'm sorry, I didn't greet you correctly." He obviously hadn't grasped the fact that Jessica and I were related. I asked Michael what he wanted, frustrated by his persistent lack of respect. "First and foremost, why are you visiting?" "I'm pretty busy," as I stated on the phone, I said icily. Michael clutched his hands uncomfortably as he gave his explanation for being here. "I take it that your company has opened a few stores close to ours recently. Given how similar our business strategies are, I believed it would be advantageous for us to collaborate." As he continued, it was evident that Michael was suggesting that his business acquire my company. He was disturbed by the rivalry in the area, but he now desired to purchase my business in order to capitalize on the circumstances. Naturally, I had no plans to close my company. Silently opening the door, I gave Michael the all-clear to depart. "Are you certain? I can take revenge in a lot of ways." Michael muttered, his voice filled with venom, perhaps from his wounded pride, "Don't come crying to me when you regret it." I swallowed my want to respond and bit back a response. Instead, I stayed silent. Michael bit his lip and walked out, leaving a noisy trail of footsteps behind him. He presumably believed that I owned just restaurants, which is why he felt so entitled to address me in such a haughty manner. It is necessary to impart to individuals such as Michael the harsh realities of the commercial world. I grabbed up my phone and tapped the contact of a crucial person to plan my next step. I got a message the next day from the employees I put in charge of running the rival eatery. Upon opening the URL they gave, I was met with a plethora of defamatory remarks on our store. The same account has made multiple posts from the day before. Was this a revenge Michael had in mind? If that is the case, it was very immature and unethical. The posts were obviously aimed to scare away consumers because they were full of lies about food safety and insults directed at the employees. I offered the staff some instructions to calm them down, and they told me that none of these statements were accurate. I have total faith in all of you. Keep the remarks exactly as they are, but send a disclosure request and get in touch with the site authorities. This is more than sufficient justification to file a lawsuit. Together, let's clear your names. My secretary entered the room as though she was waiting for me to end the call. It appears that I was called. It was clearly Michael again, when she claimed it was from the person who wanted to meet yesterday. But I told my secretary not to answer the phone. "Sorry, please tell him I'm not interested in talking, and let him know that I'll be away on a business trip for a while, so I won't be available." Disguised as a business trip, I went back to work, trying to avoid Michael. I was going about my day when I saw Jessica's email on my phone. The text of the message said, "I want to thank you all for the other day. Well, Michael arrived in our office, and now things are becoming a little problematic. He simply won't go. Could you take care of this instead of me calling the police? That would worry the workers." As soon as I opened Jessica's email, I sighed. I take it that he went to disturb Jessica instead of trying to reach me. How shameless he had to be to show up at her office was something that kept crossing my mind. Something in me wanted to see his daring for myself, so I hurriedly dressed and went to Jessica's office. "Are you back from your travels?" As soon as he saw me, Michael exclaimed, "I've been hoping to see you." He came running over and took hold of both my hands. He had done a complete 180 from when he was bragging, "I won't forgive you, even if you regret it," not too long ago. Disregarding Michael's endeavors, I faced Jessica. "You mentioned that you were having some issues. What precisely took place?" I replied in basic sign language, and Jessica gave me a weary expression in return. "He won't leave. He's attempting to make me a new agreement now. But I don't have time for this because I've already begun working with another company." Michael jumped in quickly, saying, "I'm getting even greater terms than before because of this. I sincerely hope that our collaboration can continue." Jessica firmly shook her head, rejecting the proposition even though he begged. "We've already reached our limit. In addition, didn't you always whine about how ineffective my business was? You made it sound as though those of us with disabilities were an inconvenience to society." Jessica uttered, "I will never forgive you," with firmness. She said, "And furthermore, isn't the real reason you want to make a deal with my company because you're trying to keep ties with my brother?" Michael groaned, as though she had struck the mark, and then exclaimed, "Ugh," before bending deeply to his knees. "Mr. Thompson instructed me to plead for your pardon at all costs. Please, I beg you, please." I cast a harsh gaze down at his pathetic frame. I had recently gotten in touch with Mr. Thompson of Michael's business to let him know that my company would no longer be providing any of our products to them. We had been doing their primary marketing and promotion, as well as providing their uniforms at a reduced cost. Mr. Thompson, worried about what had transpired, quickly reached out upon hearing this. Mr. Thompson sighed deeply as I described Michael's actions in detail and promised to look into the matter. Michael had been frantically trying to get in touch with me and had even attempted to contact Jessica, so I'm sure Mr. Thompson got in touch with him straight away. Naturally, neither of us intended to extend our forgiveness to him. "If you continue to stay here, I'll call the police, and I'll also inform Mr. Thompson." Michael's face became pale at the mention of Mr. Thompson and the police. Without saying anything else, he promptly gave us another bow. It became out that Michael was the author of the negative reviews of my restaurant. This naturally resulted in legal action, and the outcome is still pending. Our attorney is certain that Michael will suffer serious repercussions. Michael is undoubtedly waiting tensely for the decision as well. Since then, a different company has taken the position of Michael's restaurant, which was next to mine. In addition to losing business to my establishment, they also experienced problems as a result of mishandled food and inadequate worker training. Strangely enough, the very criticisms Michael had leveled at my business proved to be valid for him as well. The idea that he had been talking about his own company made me chuckle. Later, I received a personal apology from Mr. Thompson. In addition, he asked that we continue doing business together, claiming that Michael had been treated fairly. Michael was probably dismissed since I haven't seen him since. It made sense, given all the damage he wreaked. It is my sole hope that he makes a turnaround in his life and returns to society. In the meantime, my business keeps growing and branching out into new products and services. When I consider them, Jessica's business is also becoming well known for its inclusive employment policies, which foster an environment in which individuals with disabilities can prosper. Businesses that are primarily motivated by self-interest and short-term profitability ultimately fail. In tandem with Jessica, I intend to keep making contributions to society. He is merely an inexperienced driver who left high school. Disregard him. What? Richard scowled at what Nancy had said. Comprehensive. We'll terminate all of our agreements with your business. What? Nancy was taken aback by Richard's firm statement. Go now, please. We'll inquire further on the contract's termination. Richard meant business. I was persuaded that he was really going to terminate our contract. Wait a moment, please. Richard was ready to exit the meeting room when I stopped him and gave him my business card. Wait, Will? How come? It has been a long time. Hello, I'm Will Wilson, I said. Richard let out an enthusiastic wow. Richard, who appeared sincere in his happiness to see me, started crying and shouted, So you've come back. I couldn't resist getting emotional as well. I left Nancy completely bewildered and followed Richard out of the meeting room. My name is Will Wilson, and I work for an auto parts manufacturer. About 100 people work for our company, which includes 3 U.S. branches and 1 abroad. Actually, I was in charge of establishing the branch office abroad. I started working at the foreign branch 15 years ago and have been abroad ever since. I was old enough to be promoted to manager at the time, 49 years old. I continued to work as a regular employee, even when my friends were promoted. That's because I had a heavy sense of inadequacy over my school experience. I simply completed middle school. I never attended high school. The oldest of my 4 siblings is myself. My father moved out of our home while I was in my 2nd year of middle school to be with another lady. My mother was not well and would quickly become ill if she attempted to work a full-time job. She was the sweetest lady, though, and prioritized her kids above anything else. It was inevitable that, coming from a household like that, I would begin working rather than attending high school. There were a lot of venues in which middle school graduates could get employment back then. The quantity of laborers and their drive were frequently appreciated more during the time of economic expansion than their level of education. I was hired by an auto manufacturing to work on the production line. This plant was a subcontractor of a subcontractor for a big automaker, but it was close to my house, which was a determining factor, and the compensation was good for the time. I don't remember much about the short entry exam, but I do faintly remember it being there. I was able to get the job, and I spent around 13 years working at the factory. Since I frequently worked nights, I may have had the best pay in the factory. 13 years on, I had to make a decision. I received a job offer from the parent firm, which is currently my employer. I had been working very hard up until that point to pay for my younger brother's college education. But by then, I was beginning to feel exhausted. That was the year of my youngest brother's college graduation. My motivation to work hard was renewed after I transferred to the main business. I joined my current job at the age of 28, and at 39, I received an international assignment. The first few years of living overseas were difficult because of language and cultural hurdles, but I got used to it really quickly. I am appreciative of my wife, Maria, for accompanying me despite the uncertainty of relocating abroad. When Maria and I were engaged, that's when my assignment abroad was decided. Moving to a developing country may have raised some eyebrows, but Maria graciously agreed to accompany me. In addition, Maria delivered birth nearby 5 years after our relocation. Maria is incredibly strong, having gone through childbirth and raising a child in a strange place. Our family of 4 stayed overseas for 2 years after the birth of our 2nd child, and then we all came back to the United States together. When it returned to the United States 15 years later, the company was very different. Although I was stationed at the central office, the majority of my close friends and coworkers were now managers at other branches. Since this organization often doesn't hire recent middle school grads, I didn't have any peers when I first started. I was put in charge of the accounting division. To be honest, I was really perplexed because the work was totally different from what I had been doing. I was wondering why I was in accounting at this point in my life, as I had to learn everything from scratch. The fact that John Taylor, my previous subordinate, worked in the accounting division was something for which I was thankful. John gave me such a warm greeting when I returned from my trip abroad. I never imagined Will would work in our division. It's a pleasure working with you once more. John's enthusiasm calmed my nerves. Being in a department that I was absolutely unfamiliar with caused me anxiety. John, it's a pleasure to collaborate with you once more. I never thought you'd work your way up to manager. John claimed, it's just seniority, that's all. But I knew his abilities were the reason behind his promotion. John always planned ahead and made the appropriate decisions, which helped him always place highly in sales even when we were coworkers. Though I was older than John, there were several occasions when I felt he might outperform me. John's promotion to manager was therefore inevitable. I take it that the department head is away on business. Did she not join through mid-career recruitment? Given that she joined after I did, I think I missed her. Nancy Miller, the head of the accounting department, is 48 years old, making her 6 years my junior. I've never met her because she joined the company shortly after I was sent overseas. However, someone has to be exceptionally talented to be promoted at such an early age. Yes, a business trip, I guess. I cocked my head in response to John's ambiguous response. How come he was acting so evasive? Isn't she on a business trip? It's a business trip, but... In a whisper, John said, I'll elaborate later. There seemed to be some conditions around Nancy, but I didn't understand. Though I had to concentrate on learning my work, I was interested. I sat at my desk with that thinking. After being assigned to the accounting department for 3 days, I was beginning to understand the daily responsibilities. Nancy finally returned to the workplace after her business trip. She entered the room wearing what appeared to be an ostentatious suit, bright red lipstick, and long black hair that fell to her waist. She appeared to be a very successful professional woman. I welcomed her, saying, I'm Will Wilson, recently assigned here. Oh, you're that guy, Nancy remarked, laughing through her nose. The moron who left high school early. Was he really so useless that they shipped him abroad? Having so much dead weight in my department is the worst thing ever. Nancy told me something that I couldn't believe. That was definitely not the appropriate thing to say to a complete stranger. Furthermore, I wasn't demoted for my abroad assignment. Chan spoke up and said, Excuse me, Nancy, with all due respect, Will wasn't sent overseas because he was incompetent or foolish. I was a little relieved to see John's cheeks flush, because I knew he often did that when he was really pissed up. Nancy, you do know what Will accomplished overseas, right? What? I'm not sure. Why should I be aware of an employee's actions? She seemed to me to epitomize the word arrogant. She was undoubtedly very proud of herself and thought she was the best. He was sent to that impoverished, dusty developing nation after all. A demotion is the only possible explanation. In fact, the developing nation to which I was posted was home to individuals who lived in nearly collapsing, dust-covered cottages in the countryside. But I was living in the capital, which wasn't all that dissimilar from an American little city. Convenience stores and an American school were present. Although there was a noticeable wealth disparity, the adage, home is where you make it, proved accurate, and the generosity and friendliness of the locals really benefited my family. Nancy, the country is not as horrible as you believe. There are lots of American visitors and the food is excellent. Above all, the folks are friendly. That just seems like the lame excuse of a sore loser. It must smell awful too. That nation has a bad reputation. Everyone in the room felt she had overreached herself. John appeared as though he would leap at her. Nancy, you ought to go to that nation. Once you experience it for yourself, it's incredibly pleasant. Nancy seemed taken aback by my composed reply, perhaps anticipating a backlash. John shot me a beseeching look like he was trying to say, Please stand up to her more, but I was not going to say anything. Yes, that was over the top, but she didn't have to go that far. But I didn't feel furious. Although I don't think she intended good, everyone has different morals. Permit anyone who chooses to speak to do so. You spent 15 years overseas, and I was curious about your personality. It seems like all you are is a coward. You get it. Please try not to bring us down. Since I'm in charge here, everything I say stands. I appreciate any guidance you can offer, I said. Nancy gave a quick tongue click and turned to leave. Nancy called me the following day to invite me to a business meeting. I'll teach you directly because it appears that you don't understand anything about accounting work. You know, we are in fact in commercial negotiations. You handled one last, say, 15 years ago. Since it's likely that you've forgotten by now, let me to demonstrate. She looked anxious to brag about something, but to be honest, I don't think there's much more to learn about business negotiations at my age. John had said yesterday that Nancy was always strutting her stuff, whether it was her new hair color, nails, or accessories. He claimed that if you give her credit for whatever it is that she is bragging about, she would be happy and easier to get along with. Jan expressed this with a frustrated expression, not realizing that her colleagues shared this opinion. Nancy started talking about her previous experiences negotiating. I nodded and said something like, "I see, that's impressive," or "You're amazing." Nancy led me to a client of ours, a car manufacturing business that has been a longtime partner. They were a significant customer of ours, buying big quantities of the parts we produced. This manufacturer will employ our parts in their new automobile engine production. The price is the reason we're here. Obtaining a long-term contract is my goal. Well, the transaction is assured while I'm here. Although I didn't know where her confidence came from, I said, "I see." There shouldn't be too much difficulty in the negotiation if the contract was already decided. A man my age entered the meeting room where Nancy and I were waiting. "Thank you for coming to see us, Richard. Thank you for your time." "No issue." "Nancy, it's a pleasure to have you here." It would have been Oak with the regular representation. When Richard said this, Nancy grinned happily. Still, it was obvious that he intended for Nancy to stay away. Nancy was undoubtedly bothersome to Richard as well. Since it's a significant event, I must initiate it. "Who is this, and how?" Richard turned to face me as he attempted to change the topic. Nancy stopped me just as I was nodding and about to give her my business card. "Oh, don't worry about him," the woman remarked. "He is merely an inexperienced driver who left high school. Disregard him." Richard scowled at what Nancy had said. "What do you mean by that?" "He's a useless employee who joined us in the middle of his career and dropped out of high school. After serving a 15-year demotion overseas, he was just assigned to our team. It is inconvenient." Nancy's awful comments were presumably the subject of Richard's "what do you mean?" question, but she persisted in talking about utterly unrelated topics. Nancy didn't see that Richard's expression hardened as he listened. "Nancy, do you really mean what you're saying? What is meant by the word serious? Since I don't enjoy jokes, I always say what's on my mind." After hearing Nancy's reply, Richard sighed deeply. "Comprehensive. We'll terminate all of our agreements with your business." Nancy was taken aback by Richard's firm declaration. "You're joking." Since I dislike jokes as well, I always express my opinions. Someone who handles their subordinates that way is not someone I want to do business with. There was absolutely no smile in Richard's eyes. He appeared truly disdainful. "Hold on, I was only expressing the truth. He was sent overseas for a demotion and is actually a real high school dropout. Are you really that interested in education? To be clear, my brother did not even complete high school, and I simply completed my education. It was normal practice back then to begin working after middle school. The emphasis on education was not as great as it is now, and attending college was out of reach for those without money. Many gifted individuals never attended high school or college. When Nancy saw that Richard's sibling had also completed middle school, her face went pale. Considering the size of Richard's company's orders, terminating the contract would be a serious setback for our business. Go now, please. We will get in touch with you to discuss our contract's ending. No, wait. Richard started packing up his supplies without even glancing at the dumbfounded Nancy. Richard meant business. I had no doubts that he was sincere in his intentions to terminate our agreement. My head hurt when I saw Nancy question Richard, "Why are you so angry?" How on earth could she not know this by now? Prior to passing judgment on the educational backgrounds of others, she had to focus on honing her own comprehension abilities. Richard appeared to be frustrated by her inquiry and appeared to feel the same way. "We are not going far by talking to you. We will be moving our business elsewhere because we can obtain the products we require from other vendors." "Wait a moment, please." Richard was ready to exit the meeting room when I stopped him. I abruptly intervened, frightening Nancy, who said, "You stay quiet." Disregarding her, I gave Richard my business card. The card was newly printed this morning, and it was brand new. When Richard noticed the name printed on it, his eyes grew wide as he took it in a perplexed manner. "Wait, Will? How come? It has been a long time." "I'm Will Wilson." Richard gave me a warm greeting and said, "Wow. It has been a while. Will, you appear well." "Yes, I appreciate that. Richard, I'm shocked to see you in a managerial role." Richard gave me a hearty pat on the shoulder. "You're the impressive one." "So, you're back," he remarked with a sincere smile and sad eyes. I couldn't resist getting emotional as well. Nancy said incoherently as she stood there, "Ah." However, we disregarded her. I had so much catching up to do with Richard. "Ah, what kind of relationship do you two have?" Nancy chimed in. "Do you remain here? Simply walk out. I would like to speak with Will." Quite the opposite of his previous demeanor, Richard answered Nancy's question with a stern smile. His icy demeanor nearly brought Nancy to tears. "Regarding terminating the agreement, we will sign any agreement if Will is our agent. However, Nancy has been barred from our organization. I'd rather not see your face. Just get out of there fast." "No way." Nancy gave a gasp. Richard joyfully said to me, "Tell me about your time overseas," ignoring the puzzled Nancy. "I take it that you haven't had lunch yet. Let's head to the food." "What's going on?" As Richard and I exited the conference room together, Nancy muttered in complete confusion. Richard and I had a fancy steak lunch that day. We had a good chat about my experience abroad, but lunch was too short to address everything. "Come on, let's grab a drink," Richard said. "I want to hear so much," as he waved goodbye. John greeted me with a concerned expression as soon as I entered the office again. "Has Nancy had any incidents?" She departed early after returning, obviously upset. John grinned and said, "Well, that's convenient for me." This made me smile. There were a few problems throughout the talks, really. Perhaps it's best for her to experience some sadness. "Well, I suppose so," John acknowledged with a nod. To be honest, Nancy said some really inappropriate things during the negotiation. Not just Richard, but anyone would have been offended. I went back to work, thinking that tomorrow might be a little unpleasant with Nancy. Nevertheless, Nancy failed to show up for work the following day. If there was no communication, the absence was deemed unjustified. I was wondering if she had been in an accident or something that prevented her from getting in touch with us. But Nancy was still nowhere to be found at the end of the day. Nancy was back within 2 days. Despite notifying anyone, she showed up for work unapologetic and as if nothing had happened. She should at least say something to John, who had done all the work, even though I didn't mind if she didn't say anything to me. "Nancy, can I talk to you for a moment?" John inquired. He was speaking to her in front of all the staff members. Everyone was interested to hear what he had to say. "What? Are you having issues?" Nancy lost her temper. "Nothing from me, please. Whether you are here or not has no bearing on the work I conduct. Still, the boss has to speak with you. As soon as you arrived, he invited you to come to his office." With a frustrated sigh, Nancy said, "What a hassle." How she could have such a negative attitude in this scenario was beyond me. It was presumably because of her unexcused absences that she was in trouble when she was called to the CEO's office. "It's all your fault," Nancy said with a tongue click and a scowl before heading out of the office. I got an internal call about an hour later. "Will, can you come to the CEO's office for a moment?" It was the CEO, appearing worn out. I was discouraged when I heard someone yelling in the background and realized it was Nancy. "Understood. I'll be right there." John, who had overheard, said, "Sorry about this," with concern. "Are you going to the CEO's office?" "Yeah, the CEO seems disturbed, and I heard Nancy yelling. I'm on my way over." With excitement, John answered, "I'll come with you." I think he was concerned about me. John accompanied me to the CEO's office since I couldn't come up with a reason to decline. Nancy was shouting hysterically as we got closer, and John and I looked at each other. Nancy was still screaming at the CEO, who was sitting there looking completely weary when we walked in. "John, are you all right? You're also present. Kindly take action against her," the CEO begged. "My head feels like it's going to split." The phrase "do something about her" is confusing. "I'll be the next CEO's sweetheart," Nancy exclaimed in a strident manner. Nancy's revelation startled John, who turned to face me. "That's not true, right?" I said the words, "It can't be," in shock. John smiled sardonically and nodded. "She hasn't been coherent for some time now." John said, "Even my dog makes more sense." The CEO exhaled deeply, appearing exhausted. "I'm gonna be the next CEO's girlfriend, I swear." "How are you going to fire me?" "Who is the next CEO, in your opinion? Since I am the one doing it." Nancy let out a cry. Nancy heard my comments and immediately stopped ranting, asking, "What are you talking about?" with a flick of her eyes. "I'm going to be this company's next CEO. I'm returning to help with the transition as the current CEO is departing in 5 years." "Stop being absurd. The VP will be the next CEO," Nancy shouted. The vice president had a bad reputation for being inept. He gained access through relationships and was a relative of one of the executives. With nothing to do, he was assigned to the vice president role, a well-known reality in our organization. Nancy seems to be talking about being his girlfriend, but I seem to recall that he has a wife and children. "There's no way we let someone who can't do anything become the CEO," I replied quietly. "But the VP has a college degree, right?" Nancy's face twisted in desperation as she implored. The CEO let out a frustrated sigh. The vice president's family's money allowed him to enroll in a mediocre university. He played around for 4 years. What use does a degree like this serve? Will, on the other hand, put in a lot of work for his family and joined this corporation right out of middle school. He is far more worthy. John gave a firm nod. "But still, a college graduate is better than a middle school graduate," Nancy replied. "It's likely that you are unaware, but our admission exam is rather challenging. It measures raw intellect by testing logical and numerical reasoning in addition to academic knowledge." The vice president was far from passing. The CEO remarked with a sour face, "We just hired him because of his connections." I was aware of Will. A highly skilled and diligent middle school graduate was employed at the factory. We chose to hire him based on the manufacturing manager's recommendation. Will did remarkably well on the entrance exam. I was working 12 hours a day at the time, with 2 days off each month. I had pleaded for longer hours because I needed the money to help my brothers pay for college. My efforts must have been noted by the manufacturing manager. Since joining our organization, Will has put in a lot of effort. I knew I wanted Will to be our branch manager when we chose to open one abroad. Despite his recent marriage, I thought he was the ideal candidate for this kind of responsibility. Without a doubt, Will was the sales department's shining star. I could see how extraordinary he was, even if I was always in second. I was given the abroad assignment since the organization had high standards. It was intolerable to fail. Everyone was aware that the company's future would be greatly impacted by the foreign branch's performance. Setting up shop abroad wasn't simple. The people there mistreated me, threw rocks at me on a regular basis, and would purposefully only communicate in their language to express how much they detested me. But even so, I never planned on going back to the United States. I was resolved to meet and exceed the expectations of the entire corporation that entrusted me with this task. Maria's support by my side was also a major influence. I was committed to seeing this project through to the end. It was only natural for me to have different values and ways of thinking from the natives. Our upbringing was in utterly dissimilar cultures. That's why you never seemed to get upset with Nancy. As a result of that encounter, I gave John's statements a nod. While I went abroad, I heard a lot of nasty comments, yet getting upset over tiny things wouldn't solve the problem. In 5 years, we'll open the branch, and he stayed on for 10 more. The local staff now respects the American workers and works hard. That's because Will established a positive rapport with them. When I saw that, I realized Will was the sole candidate to succeed me as CEO. When I learned that I would be the new CEO, I was shocked. It was honorable as well as unexpected. I received the impression that my efforts had been noticed. Both inside and outside the company, Will enjoys a large following. Making the transition from middle school graduate to CEO is like something out of a play. Will has a lot of admirers, including Richard. When I worked in sales, he was one of my customers. He was quite supportive, but also apprehensive when I received the abroad assignment, even though he had treated me very well before. As he listened, the CEO nodded in agreement. It is therefore very forbidden to disparage Will in front of Richard. Richard still exudes anger. He suggested that we fire you, Nancy, when he called this morning. Why am I the one getting fired? For the first time, I realized why Nancy had been summoned to the CEO's office. Even if Richard's comments alone would make it difficult to fire her, her previous unexcused absences and her involvement with the VP were additional problems. We have been serving Richard's organization as a big client for a considerable amount of time. I've heard that you spoke to him harshly at times. Nancy attempted to justify herself. I was just stating the facts, but she trailed off as she saw her situation getting worse. You weren't performing the majority of your manager responsibilities, I've also heard. Has John not been filling in for you? As he said, the CEO sighed. Over the preceding 3 days, I'd heard that Nancy's subordinates had John double-check everything before gaining her sign-off, because she was so prone to errors in her approvals. Nancy was essentially a symbolic person. The executive meeting is where your fate will be determined. For too long, you got your way. Be ready for the proper repercussions. No, hold on. I've had a lot of stuff to do. This is excessive. Nancy spoke with tears in her eyes. But I wasn't sure what precisely she had been putting a lot of effort into. She spent much of her time having an affair with the VP and hardly worked at all. It was discovered that she had taken a vacation with the VP in lieu of her recent business trip. There would be repercussions for her as well. Nancy doesn't seem to be doing a very good job at her job. It doesn't seem like much of a purpose to acquire a degree if it means becoming like her and the VP, to be honest. John laughed at what I had said. Nancy, flushed, said nothing. She was not going to recover. All right, that brings an end to our conversation. I'm sorry to call you in, Will John. Now you may resume your work. Nancy, wait until your sentence is decided before coming to the office. Nancy was distraught after hearing the CEO's stern statement. John and I ignored her and walked out of the CEO's office. It was then agreed that Nancy would be let go with cause. The primary causes included her harsh comments to staff members, her unexcused absences, her conduct during negotiations, and her liaison with the vice president. The vice president stated icily that it was only a fling, despite Nancy's claims that she was his major partner. Despite not divorcing him due to the affair, The VP's wife requested a sizable compensation from Nancy. Nancy's awful remarks on her social media were discovered by the VP's wife, who works in the entertainment business. After it was discovered through a disclosure request that Nancy was the source of the remarks, more compensation demands were made. Nancy had lost everything in an instant, was deeply in debt, was unable to pay her rent, and her flat was taken away from her. It's said that she's living almost on the streets these days. Maria and the children adjusted to American life quite fast. The children had never lived in Los Angeles, so I was a little concerned. But they made friends at school and had more life experience than most children their age. As for me, I put forth a lot of effort every day in the accounting department. I work with John as a manager every day because I was brought into this area to gain knowledge of the business's finances before to becoming CEO. Will, you're becoming too proficient at your work. If things continue this way, by next month, you'll be taking on the role of CEO. John has adopted this as his new catchphrase. Every day, he expresses his desire for me to continue working in the accounting department. I don't think he'll be next month, but isn't it hard for you to work with me here? Not at all. The staff think highly of you, more than you realize. After middle school, you put your brothers through college by working at the factory, and now you're slated to become the company's CEO. It's simply too awesome. I've seen that after I returned, the way that employees view me has dramatically changed from before I left. Many colleagues had doubts about my ability to handle the overseas assignment prior to my departure. Still, the foreign branch is already quite profitable, and plans to open another are even being discussed. Everyone looks at me with respect since employee bonuses have increased dramatically, and the CEO openly credits me for this. By the way, it seems Richard's company has proposed expanding our business together. Yes, Richard brought it up explicitly when we just went out to drink. It's a fantastic chance. Richard's announcement that he will take over as CEO of his company startled me. It's not hyperbole to suggest that Richard is in charge there right now. Richard wants to increase our business operations because he has developed a strong liking for me. The CEO constantly setting new goals for me when I was feeling aimless. I will be this company's CEO in 5 years. I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to keep every employee safe. I'm David, and I started working for a big food producer just after I graduated from college. My 10th year with the company is this one. I don't believe I'm particularly attractive, but I'm not dating. I was quite green when I first started. Nevertheless, I've developed into a section head who is currently in control of multiple subordinates because of some amazing mentors as well as my own efforts. I think I'm looked up to by my team, even though I've never heard that said directly. Our workplace is relatively conventional. Therefore, during our frequent social drinking sessions, I've assisted my team in resolving both personal and professional concerns. I can be wrong, but this could be the reason people respect me. I've taken on the role of mentor to some extent for the newcomers. I've been training new hires for the previous few years. However, there's one exceptionally self-assured woman among them this year. David, I need a favor, Ethan, the department head, said to me one day in reference to the new hires for this year. This is how the discussion got underway. It was not so much a consultation as it was a request. What's going on? You've suddenly become really formal. Well, it's about a woman named Madison Clark. Clark doesn't seem familiar. Does it not? Apparently the same name as President Clark. Is that possible? Yes, she's the daughter of President Clark. Daughter of President Clark? Does that imply she is given preferential treatment? No, President Clark insists on not giving her any special treatment and wants her to be treated like anyone else. Even so, it's going to be a bit difficult to deal with, isn't it? That's the issue. She is the spoilt daughter of Mr. Clark, an incredibly loving father. She is, to put it frankly, extremely spoilt. Ah, the typical traits of a CEO's daughter. Apparently, she's very willful, always gets what she wants, and is moody, refusing to do anything she dislikes. That does seem problematic. Are you saying this because... Wait a minute. You pick things up quickly, Ethan observed with a small smile. She will be placed in your department, and you will serve as her mentor. Ah, so it's already been decided. It was determined that you are the best fit because of your history and your well-known compassion. So that's the circumstances. I am depending on you. Ethan gave me a shoulder pat and walked away. Wait, hold on. After Ethan departed, I went to the break room to get some coffee and clear my head because I was feeling down. Really, without even taking my viewpoint into account? Perhaps I ought to decline. The taste of the black coffee was very unpleasant. However, I hadn't met her yet, so it wouldn't be just to make assumptions based only on hearsay. That thought crossed my mind as I finished my coffee. Well, I might as well accept this as part of the job and give it a shot. I went back to my desk after throwing the empty cup in the garbage. The day of the new recruit's arrival then arrived. I noticed brand new hires everywhere I looked, all dressed sharply in suits. Their expressions and manner betrayed their uneasiness, which I thought was kind of cute. Our department was also given the expected new hire. I waited, excited to see what kind of person she would be, but it was well past the start time. Particularly considering that new hires were expected to show in 30 minutes early, yet they were nowhere to be found. Everyone in the department felt uneasy since Ryan, the manager, was meant to introduce her during the morning assembly but was taken aback by her absence. I attempted to get in touch with her as I was her assigned mentor, but she didn't pick up the phone, so I was at a loss. It seemed that something had to happen. Well, we can't do the introduction right now without her present. Everyone, please get to work, Ryan said, apprehensively calling off the morning assembly. Train delays could be excused for 10 or 20 minutes, but even after an hour or two, she was nowhere to be seen. Lunch was almost over when a stranger with a lot of makeup and sparkly, extravagant clothing walked into the room. Her appearance caught everyone's attention because it was so inappropriate for a food firm. Who was that? I pondered. The identical notion must have crossed everyone's mind there. The woman entered the room, glanced around, grabbed a neighbor, and asked, "Where's my seat?" I was instructed to start coming here today. Excuse me, but who might you be? I inquired. Are you unaware of who I am? Madison Clark is who I am. She said, I was told to work in Sales Division 3, loudly enough for everyone in the room to pay attention to her. If you're with Sales Division 3, your desk would be over by that window. Is that so? After that, she approached us with assurance. Is this Division 3 sales? Where is my desk located? Ryan got to his feet and ran to her. Madison Clark, are you? This is where your desk is located. You have been assigned to Sales Division 3, where I oversee the Supply Management Division. Are you serious? Is that accurate? And this is David, who will oversee your instruction. I'll leave the rest to you, David. This is Madison Clark, who has been assigned to us. Ryan hastily went back to his desk after that. My name is David, and I'm here to help. I have been directed to instruct you on a variety of work-related topics. It's good to meet you. Yeah, nice to meet you too. Though I was a little put out by her condescending demeanor, I was able to remain composed because I had been warned. There's something I want to say before we get to work. Her statement surprised me as I was prepared to confront her over her tardiness today. Hey, I'm new here. Will you not be pleased to have me? You would normally welcome a newcomer, don't you? It's really depressing here, and everyone is just ignoring me and tinkering with their computers. To think she was hoping for a warm reception. I couldn't even begin to express how shocked I was. This was more self-centered than the rumors had suggested. Still, I steeled myself to go through with the training, reminding myself that this was part of the job. Madison, Do you know what time it is? It's almost 12 o'clock. What? How could I be aware of that? You don't know the time. I don't have a watch, and my phone's battery died, so I need to charge it. Right. What does she say? I thought I would have to start her education over from the beginning. She said, "Hey, how long do I have to stand here?" At that moment, "My workstation is where? Get moving and show me." I clenched my fists, almost too involuntarily, for this attitude was becoming intolerable. Ryan immediately grabbed my arm after realizing this and tried to comfort me. Rather of acting as a true mediator, it appeared more like he was attempting to salvage face. "All right, I'll let you handle the rest, haha." And with that, he was back at his desk like a man avoiding flames. Regaining my composure somehow allowed me to start the actual training, reasoning that, as annoying as this is, I have to get through it as part of the job. First things first, a business computer and your office materials are ready. My workstation is right next to yours. Assemble the computer and stash the supplies within the desk. You can read this guidebook to learn how. Please feel free to ask any queries you may have. She let out a deep breath and reluctantly started to arrange and set up her desk. Yeah, what a hassle. It's me who wants to sigh in this situation. I have been assigned such a difficult new recruit. In any case, she will be working in sales and has been assigned to our department. I was going to start her out by teaching her the ropes. The CEO's daughter expressed lack of excitement when I taught her how to welcome and bargain with clients, asking, "Why do I have to perform this kind of work? I can't possibly be inspired by chores like these." "We're in the sales department," I said, sighing. "We must market our goods to customers. It's your responsibility to sell our clients' stuff. For now, concentrate on the task at hand." She pouted during the training, accepting it with reluctance. I went about a training regimen systematically, even if she lacked common sense. It was time for her sales debut at last. I picked a reliable, dependable client from my network to go with her. She only needed to smile in the background, as it was only intended to be an introduction. She's never been quiet before, though, so I doubted it. "The client is very important. Please be mindful of your behavior," I told her over and over. But I was unable to overcome my nervousness. Naturally interested in the new hire, the client asked a number of questions that left me feeling tense and completely worn out. We were able to see the client without any significant problems, for some reason. It was a relief that the client's supervisor was understanding and forgave her little transgressions because she was a newbie. But after only one client meeting, she seemed so worn out that I began to worry about when she would be able to support herself. It was almost time to clock out before I realized it. Gee, why must I endure all of this? I was thinking about this, lost in thought. All of a sudden, I realized she was missing. Thinking she could have gone inside, I glanced inside the convenience shop, but she wasn't there either. Neither in front of us nor behind us could we find her. I pondered where she could have gone and tried to give her a call, but we had to head back to the office to make a report. "Oh, David, do you need something?" she responded. "Not that I'm in need of anything." "Where are you at this moment?" "We must return to the office to finish the report." "How come?" "However, aren't we already past business hours?" "I'm taking a taxi home right now." Was I meant to head straight back? Anyhow, I'm leaving for home. Hey, she just hung up after saying what she wanted to say. What a self-centered show. I was desperate for some patience. She arrived late to work the following day, as usual, and I caught her. "Come on in. What's the deal with this suddenly?" "Please accompany me." Despite my severe tone, she grudgingly obeyed with her typical behavior. We went to the conference room, and I forced her to take a seat. "What made you walk away by yourself yesterday?" "Well, I went home because it was the end of the workday, and I didn't want to work overtime." "At the very least, let me know before you leave." I will be concerned if you vanish without saying anything. You're scarried, dash. Isn't it evident to leave the office and head home without saying anything? It is common courtesy to notify before departing. Do you not even comprehend that fundamental idea? David, you're frightening me. It goes without saying that with your present mindset, you're failing both personally and in sales. And yesterday, why did you not speak with me? Perhaps you ought to have announced your departure. You already know that you'll become lonely at work. Do you comprehend? You don't have to express it that way, though. You are the one forcing me to say it. I erupted into a verbal storm of rage. We had this conversation for about an hour. Eventually, she stopped talking, unable to respond. However, when I finished speaking, I observed a shift in her attitude. Her fists were clenched tight, her eyes were gloomy, and her mouth was turned down in a frown. Still, she continued to glare at me while snapping her mouth shut and bellowing. "How dare you lecture me?" "Just wait," she exclaimed, storming out the room. I wanted to punch my former self for accepting her training at that very moment. Going to the break room to pass time with a coffee, I'd assumed she wouldn't be back at her desk for a bit. I returned to my desk as soon as I felt it was time. "What on earth did you do to her?" Ryan asked, his face pale as he walked up to me. "What are you trying to say?" I was merely offering her some advice regarding her studies. She sobbed as she went. What? It was unbelievable to me that she had left for home. It felt as though she had shot herself in the foot. Ryan continued to tell me that she was still new and to be kinder. However, when I shot back, "So, Ryan, are you going to look after her? You know, she's a handful." He lapsed into silence. Ryan told me that President Clark wanted to see me the next day. "President Clark invited you to attend. There's something crucial to talk about," he stated. Well, this news isn't going to be good. The other workers were chatting among themselves in whispers. The history was well known, and it was widely accepted that she was the president's daughter. When the provided data was analyzed, the solution became evident. Well, I get it. I'm going to spend some time in the president's office. Sure, please carry that out. This must be the end for me professionally. It seemed as though I was given my death sentence. She probably complained about me to her father, President Clark, given her personality. She probably overstated the story because of her personality. Will I even receive severance compensation, and if so, can I live off of it in savings? Not if I get fired for wrongdoing. I made my way to the president's office carrying these ideas. My gait was heavy, and so was my mood. I banged on the president's office door. "It's David from the sales department, coming." "Just, excuse me." I spotted President Clark and Ethan inside as I pulled open the door and went inside. For me, this is undoubtedly the end. I thought this as I stood there motionless. Surprisingly softly, President Clark apologized for calling during business hours. "I'm grateful you could make it. Kindly have a seat." His manner confused me, but I did as he requested and sat down. Then all of a sudden, President Clark apologized to me. "I apologize for all of it. My daughter seems to have been giving you a lot of grief." "No. Well, yes, but..." I had never experienced President Clark apologizing to me before. I was still in disbelief when President Clark smiled warmly and started speaking serious. "My daughter has been through a lot. President Clark's experience can be summed up as follows. His wife put in a lot of work with him while he started the company. Her unwavering efforts, nonetheless, resulted in disease and hospitalization. Then Mr. Clark and his daughter were the only ones living at home. She used to vent her frustrations on her father because, in her tender years, she yearned for her mother's affection. Mr. Clark attempted to make up for not being able to attend to her due to his job commitments by granting all of her wishes. Her spoiled conduct was the result of this strategy backfiring. It was too late when he recognized his parenting error. As I heard this, I couldn't help but feel bad for her. She was venting her anger at her father at work. Isn't it what they refer to as acting out? I hope she wouldn't use her privileges at work, even though her feelings toward her father were none of my concern. To start with, I'm sorry for entrusting you with my daughter's education. To be honest, I've failed as a father, said President Clark once more. But from what I've heard, you're highly valued for your mentoring within the organization. My daughter doesn't listen to me, but since you've been guiding her, she has begun to show some signs of change. This proves it was a good idea to find her interesting. Okay. It seemed that the worst-case situation had been averted, but I had no idea what to say. I may have worried you a little because of the situation, but in reality, the reverse is true. I want you to keep working hard. Please treat my daughter with the strictness you require, without taking my status into account. Yes, I do comprehend. I'll work hard to live up to your expectations. President Clark appeared to have realized that his daughter wasn't best served by merely being pampered. How about this? You handle everything pertaining to my kid. I won't stop you no matter what she says, so please keep teaching her rigorously the way you know best. Yes, I do comprehend. I'll try my hardest. Sorry to involve my personal matters, but I'm counting on you. The result caught me off guard, and I felt overburdened with responsibility, but it was also relieving to know that I was entrusted with something so significant. I made the decision to approach her differently. When she casually sauntered in beyond the start time the following day, as usual, I approached her. Madison, do you even realize what time it is? Hi. H. David. Happy morning. Isn't it 10:30? It appears that up until now, I've been too forgiving of you. I'm going to be Thora from now on, so be ready for that. Thora? By what do you mean? Is it really legal for you to say that? I am, indeed. Express yourself whatever you please. To begin with, why are you here at this particular time? The working hours of the company were disclosed to you during your orientation, right? Yes. So what time is our company supposed to start work? 8:50 a.m. You're telling me that you respect the end time, but not the beginning time. Does that even make sense? Well, I'm just not a morning person. At 8:50 a.m., nobody would be here if that excuse were true. What time of day do you typically wake up? Currently at 9:00 a.m. I'm shocked. The commencement time of 9:00 a.m. has already passed. I apologize. Please set your alarm for 6:00 a.m. tomorrow. I aim to arrive at work by 8:30 a.m. every day. You ought to follow suit. What? Not at all. That is not feasible. Furthermore, from now on, there will be penalties for being late. Her face flushed crimson red at the news. She was obviously quite angry. David, are you even capable of that? Are you in the right? Yes, I do. The decision has been made. President Clark has given me complete authority in relation to your matter. This implies that President Clark is unable to influence the choices I make. That is despotism. Power abuse. Yes, I'll utilize my power wisely. There will be fines for being late starting tomorrow. I may deduct money from your paycheck if it doesn't resolve the problem. That's harsh. If the fines bother you, put in a lot of effort in your work. That is all there is to it. Yes, she reluctantly accepted my requirements. It's not your fault that you're late today, but at least dress nicely. All workers in our organization, which handles food, are required to keep a clean workplace. You work in sales. While the client from the other day may have been understanding, not all clients will be. Start by speaking more clearly and dressed correctly. She was muttered something under her breath and appeared to be whining. Do you have something to say? No. I know you may whine all you want, but just control your words. You should act like the working adult that you are. Indeed, I did declare my intentions in front of everyone. But since she continued to look unhappy, I moved the lecture into a meeting room. I started by stressing the value of appropriate grooming. Maintaining a certain level of knowledge about haircut, nail length, and the fundamental common sense expected of working professionals is essential for staff handling food. She responded with objections as I highlighted each problem. Why is my hairstyle not looking right? That shouldn't be an issue as long as it's properly set and my nails are painted nicely, right? At that point, I emphasized how crucial it is to keep a professional manner when working for a food company. The same standard of hygiene and cleanliness is anticipated even if one is not working directly on-site. She argued about personal rights and uniqueness, but I was clear that selfishness and individuality are not the same thing. She was the source of change, else it would be pointless. I persevered with patience. Pay attention to your haircut and nail length in addition to your clothing when it comes to grooming. We all need to exercise mindfulness as employees of food companies, even if we're not working in the production sector. Even my nails and hair do. But I'm not cooking, am I? It is a fundamental idea. Workers in the food industry cannot afford to make a negative impression. Clarity must be maintained, and good grooming is a necessary component of that. I knew, even though she didn't seem to agree. Her agreement seemed encouraging to me. I chose to use my new strategy for the time being, but she was late again the very following day. Oh, of course, Madison. What took place today? I'm on my way, was all that I heard. Well, I just couldn't wake up early. I see. I got it then. I have to impose a penalty, as I have warned. You are to clean the men's and women's restrooms as your punishment. Cleaning the toilet. This is how things are going to be, so don't whine. But the cleaning lady usually does that. Whatever. Acquire knowledge by working together. I said, come with me, taking Madison by the arm and leading her to the restrooms. I gave her the cleaning products after that, but she dropped the cleaning supplies. I can't do this. It's impossible. Oh dear, you shouldn't treat the tools so roughly. A voice called out to them from behind. It was the maid. Is this the girl David mentioned? I see. It appears that she needs to becoming more resilient. Yes, that is her. She's a real handful. I apologize for bringing this up so quickly. Please, take care of her. Don't worry, leave it to me. What's with this lady? Madison whispered to herself. This is Evelyn, who is well known throughout the organization for her loving demeanor. Every year, she assists in the training of new recruits. She's more severe than I am. Please introduce yourself. Madison here from sales. Hello. I'm glad to have met you. Hey, hello. This is Evelyn. I've worked here for 15 years. I was raised in downtown New York and am the most intrusive person here. Just wait, I'll teach you the proper way to clean. Evelyn gave a hearty laugh. Evelyn is much more than the cleaning lady that everyone just refers to her as. Madison was perplexed. Grab those tools now. Since they are weapons, we must handle them carefully. I've never cleaned toilets before. Well then, this is a great opportunity. I will thoroughly instruct you. You can go until it's finished, so get ready. Madison gave me a desperate look. That's the reality. Even though you may not be valuable at work, you can still make a difference here. Take this as a lesson and consider what you did. All right. Yes, everything is fine. Prepare, I'll lend you an extra apron. Please move quickly, or I'll squirt water on those lovely clothing. I apologize for the inconvenience and I appreciate your help, I said to Evelyn. Don't mention it. I returned to work, but my worries about the state of affairs prevented me from concentrating. I went to see how they were doing around half an hour later. Look, the dirt won't come off if you just draw circles like that. You lack efficiency greatly. We'll stay here until the morning if you continue on this path. Are you incapable of cleaning? Ensure that the brush reaches the corners. Like this? Madison asked, panting. Yes, that's better, but you need to put more effort into it. I can't anymore. My hands are too tired. Oh, please, hurry up. There are still 3 to complete, and you've only completed 2. You're already giving up on me? I'm in my 60s, and I do this on every floor every day. You know, kids these days, you need to be thanking David. No, all of this is because he takes you seriously. You would have been out on your ear by now if he had given up on you. Are you serious? Considering everything, why do you believe he's still harassing you? He sees something in you and wants to help, just like me. Are you serious? You know you're loved. Heh. As soon as I saw how hard she was working, I decided against saying anything. Madison was demonstrating the effort of someone who was sincerely striving. She was panting and sweating. After all, punishment is required and has been shown to be successful. Her tardiness dramatically decreased starting the following day. She's actually capable, the cleaning lady affirmed. She's simply been pouting and not putting in her best effort. With the right care, she has the potential to be very talented. Madison was remarkably attentive during a session I conducted on pricing negotiations for product delivery. She made careful notes and listened intently before coming over to me. Thank you for the session today, David. It was incredibly educational. Hey, you're acting really helpful today. Have you consumed anything odd? What topic are you discussing? This is serious, I promise. I apologize for it. What's going on then? All right, so what is it? How come you don't become angry with someone as self-centered as I am? It's required for the job. I also want you to gain independence as soon as possible. I'm holding these study sessions for that reason. She therefore recognized her own selfishness. It was a strange realization to me. Does becoming independent help you in any way? Obviously there is. What kind of thing would that be? First off, I wouldn't have to worry about unnecessary things. Please respond thoughtfully. Well, it means less work for me if I can interest you in a job. Madison said, David, you kind of a softie, aren't you? You seem really sure, though. Similar to that housekeeper. Is that a backhanded praise of any kind? You're still as naughty as ever, just when I thought you'd grown more mature. That's just the way I am. Grumbling, she turned away and walked out of the room. Well, even though she remained chubby, her growth was evident. Actually, I had begun piquing her curiosity by checking in with a few clients. And overall, I got good feedback, which was indicative of her attitude on her first day of work. Seeing how much she has changed, almost like a different person, feels oddly moving. I'm happy that, in spite of the difficulties, I persisted in mentoring her. I also have to thank the cleaning lady who assisted me in taking care of her. Next, 5 years went by. My mentorship at the time was acknowledged, and I received a seamless promotion to section chief. President Clark went so far as to say that my promotion included a thank you note for that period. Madison was now in charge of her own team of subordinates. I used to believe she was just a prick, but upon closer inspection, she did have some endearing qualities. But now her subordinates saw her as a formidable boss. Is it too much to ask? You won't be employed by us for very long if you have that mindset. Call me if you're going to be late. Please don't send me an email. I won't reply to it. It's okay to dress up, but keep in mind that our business is centered around food. No long nails at all. Make sure to trim them before entering. Guiding her juniors, she sounded just like me in the past. That obstinate newbie actually did change. She did, after all, always say things boldly. David, I'm used to thinking like this. We must head out quickly to avoid being late for our appointment. Yes, exactly. Please allow me a moment to prepare. Madison reprimanded me after I was discovered to be daydreaming. Then, both of us started off. You've evolved, have you not? Well, I suppose my efforts were fruitful. For real? Yes, I appreciate your advice. You know, your tie is a little loose. You ought to be more aware that a food industry employee's look matters. Then she helped me tie my tie. I apologize, but you continue to talk too much. What are you saying? Have you read the materials for today? You do remember to present, right? She gave me a tie as a gift and remembered my birthday, even though she's still as talkative as ever. She appeared to realize that this was the first time I had worn it. Regarding the tie, I appreciate that. I'm often chastised for having conventional wisdom. You can complain too, surely. Oh, come on, that's not really important. She muttered something under her breath. Such an oblivious. But I couldn't quite make out what she said. What did she say? Should our presentation go well today, perhaps we ought to rejoice as a group. I quickly made my way to the client's place after thinking that.